This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with a Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Okay, we are back for a Christmas week episode. This is going to be not airing Thursday because today's Thursday. We're going to do a double shot with our two episodes on Friday, which is right now. You're watching this right now because it's Friday. So, but my uncle escaped Alcatraz. We're here with Ken and Mike on this holiday week, and we got a special episode. Both of these gentlemen have talked to someone very interesting, and someone that's related to the case, via Alfred, the brother who, quote unquote, apparently tried to escape from Kilby Prison and was, quote unquote, allegedly electrocuted when he tried to escape. This person, we're not going to use his full name. His name is Al, his first name, but he was housed with Alfred in Kilby Prison way back when in the 60s. And he told both of these guys some really interesting information, and which kind of validates some of the stuff we've been talking about, but also kind of throws us a curveball or two that we know. So who wants to start? Who wants to start off and kind of give us lay down the story from what Al was telling you?
So Mike actually spoke to him first, but I actually had the contact from U.S. Marshal Michael Dykes in 2015. For whatever reason, he sent me an email, and I have it. I think I shared it with you, where this Al person contacted him, not the marshals contacting him. He actually contacted the marshals, undoubtedly, according to U.S. Marshal Dykes, and wanted to talk to me. Said he was a cellmate of Alfred's when they were in Kilby Prison. And so Marshal Dykes said, here's the guy's name and here's his phone number if you want to call him. For whatever reason, I never called the guy. I don't know why. I don't know. For some reason, I just didn't feel like, I don't know. It's a strange feeling for the reason I didn't call him. So years later, over 10 years, I share it with y'all. And Mike, I'm thinking, okay, this guy's probably dead. It's been 10 years. And if he was in Kilby Prison with my uncle, he had to be very old. So I just said, hey, if y'all want to reach out to him, fine. Well, Mike calls him. Mike, you take over from here. And
Mike,
I'll follow up with
Mike, unlike you, Ken, Mike, unlike you, didn't waste any time.
No. I mean, literally, Ken sends the email. He included the email that Michael Dykes originally sent, saying, I've talked to him. He seems like a legit guy. I have confidence in what he's saying. He's being truthful. Because one of the things we've talked about before was, people who claim to have a connection to Alcatraz or the brother, the Anglin family, or so forth. You start talking to them and little, red flags start popping up, or they don't know them at all. They think they know what's going on, but they don't really know the people. They just believe that they do. So you can't just take anything at face value. But Michael Dykes was basically, vouching for him, like, hey, he's a reliable guy. You might be interested in what he had to say. And like Ken said, he just didn't do it. And then sent this email, just sort of throwing it out there, like, hey, if you want to talk to him, see what happens. And I looked at that. I thought about it for about a minute, and I thought, it has a phone number. Why not? Why not give it a try? What do I have to lose? Figuring either the number is going to be disconnected or the person answering doesn't know who Al is, never heard of him. and then it's a dead end. We move on. Well, I call up the number. It rang once or twice. I get a hello. And I said, yes, can I speak to Al, please? And he goes, this is Al. And I just kind of paused for a second, like, he's alive and he's answered the phone. And then I didn't know what to do at that point. I was, it's kind of like when you're wanting to just leave a message on the answer machine and they pick up. It's like that kind of a moment. It's like, what do I say? And then he said, you don't know who I am, but I wrote a book about Alcatraz. I'm connected with Ken Widener, who's the nephew of John and Clarence, and just kind of did a little bit of background to sort of establish my credibility of why I'm calling him out of the blue. And I said, I'd like to ask you some questions about, Alfred and what happened to him the night that he died. Would you be willing to talk? He says, yeah, I'll talk to you. And then for the next half hour, we spoke about Alfred. And he, like Ken's mother, he's 89 years old. They're the same age. And his memory is sharp. He was answering questions. He knew the information. He gave a lot of details. It wasn't just sort of vague recollections. It was very specific information that he provided. And he surprisingly also spoke about Ken's uncles, John and Clarence, about their escape from Alcatraz and where they ended up. He knew he had that information. So it's more than just his experience with Alfred. He had broader information that directly ties to the escape. And what happened after the escape.
Just for our listeners, because I know we've touched on him, did a cursory touch on him, but let's talk about, when he was in Kilby with Alfred, how much time did they spend together? I mean, just give us a little thumbnail sketch.
Well, you go ahead, Mike.
No, that's okay. Go on.
Okay. But when I talked to him, I was kind of curious the same way. I was like, okay, so I know that Alfred shows up to Kilby Prison in September of 1963. He said he was already there, and Alfred was actually in a cell right beside him. So they were very close together, and they could, talk to each other. I guess that's the way prisoners did. And he was there all the way up until Alfred was killed, January the 11th, 1964. So maybe 5 months, 3 months. And then they quickly shipped him out to another prison. There's some story, that he had around this. One of the things that I did when I called him, I was like, okay, I want to record this. So I set my GoPro up, put it in 4K, and I got very, very close to it, put him on speaker. And I asked him, was it okay if I recorded him? He said, yes. I even recorded it on my phone. So I hit record on my phone so I could have the actual, I could hear it a little bit better.
Yeah.
But it was pretty amazing what he revealed and said. And I told Mike, I walked away from that first meeting with him, and I am more convinced than ever that Alfred was murdered in prison.
Wow.
And I mean, we can get into that. We can, we
can definitely get into some more detail of it.
I mean, he kind of had several bombshells that stuff we had never heard before, new information. And that's why talking to him was very exciting. And I knew when I was talking to him, because one of the things I did ask as we were talking and he was relaying information was, would you like to be on our show? Would you like to do the podcast? And he did not want to come on the show. He has concerns about his prison record, that there was some things that happened with that, and that coming on the show would jeopardize some things for him. And then also kind of putting that part of his life behind him, and doesn't want it to be sort of public, although we are speaking about it now. And he did give us permission to speak about it. So that is good. We have that outlet, and Ken has the recording of his conversation. For mine, I was so surprised he didn't, that he answered that. It was a verbal for me. I didn't record it because it was just, I just want to ask him questions while I had the opportunity. Sure. Mm-hmm. And so now I was like, coming up with questions very quickly that related to Alfred and the escape and so forth. So one thing that he talked about, the night of the escape was he was adamant that
Alfred, the escape
at Kilby Prison. Yes. Thank you. From Kilby Prison. That he, and then later when he talked to me, it was just him, and he kind of referenced there was another inmate, but he didn't really go into a lot of detail. But with Ken, Al said that it was him and the other inmate helped Alfred to escape. That was their intention. They were not going to escape themselves. It was they were assisting him, and then after Alfred was going to get out, when he got out of the prison, they were going to go back to their cells and pretend like nothing happened until the prison discovered he was out. So it was him and at least one other prisoner that assisted him in that. He did say, which was a brand new piece of information, was that Alfred had told Al, it's going to be hard to keep them together, Alfred and Al, or keep them separate, I should say, that Alfred had made arrangements with at least one member of his family that was waiting to pick him up the night of the escape.
Mr. Mann?
Yes. I talked to my mom, and she was like, the only person that would have been involved, if there truly was someone going to pick him up, it would have been Uncle Man.
Yeah.
Because no other brother would have known about it. Uncle Man is the only one who went to visit him outside of my family. So, if anyone was going to be picking him up, it would have been Uncle Man.
All right. Well, let's stop for a second, because we initially, when we talked about it, and you've talked about in the book, we had thought the escape plan was kind of just the narrative that the prison was given as far as what was going on, and we didn't believe that Alfred was going to try to escape because he had a parole come up. But you found out some new information, so tell us what that is, and that which would have been the motivation for Alfred wanting to try to escape.
Right. We've talked many times about how illogical it was for Alfred to escape so close to his parole hearing. Ken and his family, they visited him on December 23rd, 1963. In about 2 weeks or so, he was going to have his parole hearing, or several weeks after that. And he was very optimistic. He was working with the ACLU that was helping him with overturning his conviction, because it was, he got a double conviction, state and federal, and felt that was unfair, and was very optimistic that he was going to be released very soon, and that he had told the family when they were at the picnic table just outside the prison that he knew where his brothers were, and when he got out, that he was going to be reunited with them. And then, of course, a couple weeks later, he was dead. What Al told us was, because they seemed to have a strong friendship, because they talked a lot, because they were in the cells next to each other, and Alfred shared a lot of information with Al. And one of the things that he said was, after the brothers had escaped, the FBI had visited him several times and interrogated him, asking him questions about the escape, where his brothers were, confess, admit, that sort of thing. And then at some point, that to kind of up the pressure on Alfred, because he didn't say anything, he didn't reveal any information, that
Wait. Sorry. Go ahead.
that's okay, that the FBI threatened him with federal prison, going back to federal prison. And he was going to go to prison for another 10 or 15 years, that they were going to bring additional charges against him if he didn't cooperate. And so Alfred had told Al that he didn't feel that he can do that kind of a stretch again, after he'd already gotten out of federal prison and into state prison. And he just couldn't do it. And so that's what motivated him to escape on January 11th, because of the threats and intimidation by the FBI.
Got it.
Yeah, but now let's throw a twist into this. I love a good twist to a story. Right?
Mhm.
Right.
So I told Mike, after talking to Al, either Al was not telling the truth when he talked to me, or the guards at the prison gave the wrong information to the FBI. Now the FBI, this is and this is what is so, I've never been able to understand this. We're talking about the FBI reports for the escape from Alcatraz.
Mm-hmm.
And what does the death of Alfred have to do with the escape from Alcatraz? Why is it in the FBI reports for the escape from Alcatraz? Never could understand that. my grandmother's death's not in there. I mean, but his is.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, as we're sitting there talking, I started quizzing him based upon the FBI report, because based upon what was written in the FBI report, it said that Alfred, and of course it's redacted, so I'm assuming that this is Al, I won't say his last name, are hiding in a closet, they said, in a clothing room. Now, according to Al, they were in the laundry room, which kind of matches up, right? Yep. So it's over the administrative building. It's the second floor. There is a couple of windows, and the window leads out onto the roof that, if you're looking at the very front of the building, that is that roof. And so, according to the FBI files, when around 8 o'clock, there is a trip on the wire saying there was a fault, something has happened, someone's tripped the wire. The guards rush into the room where it was occurring at, and Alfred is halfway out of the window, and his feet, or according to this, is still in the hole on the window, and the guy who was trying to help him escape, or was going with him, it sounded like it was going with him, was still in the room. So that's the story that you hear from the FBI report. Well, according to Al, that's not how it happened. He said that him and Alfred and this other individual, which he gave me the name this morning, they had gone into the laundry room. He used to work. Is
this the first time you heard that name?
First time I've heard this name. Okay. So, well, actually not. Michael Dykes gave it to me in 2015 on that email, and I didn't know this was the same guy.
Got it.
So anyway, he said that around 6 o'clock, him and Alfred and this other individual go into the laundry room. He worked there. He had found out that one of the windows would let up, so he had told Alfred about it. And what they were going to do is let the window up. They were going to put a mattress out the window, and Alfred. I agree with you, Mike. This is tough. Al and Alfred. Alfred was going to go through the window and was going to escape. And then they were going to take the mattress back out of the window, let the window down. They were going to go back to his cell, and they were going to fix his bunk up as though he was still in the bunk, in his bed. Does that sound familiar? Almost kind of like Alcatraz, right? Yeah. And so he said, as Alfred was going through the window, his clothes got caught, and he lifted up and he came in contact with the electrical wire on his back. He said that it threw Alfred out of the window back into the room on the floor. And at first, he told me that him and the other guy freaked out and ran out of there and went all the way back to their cells. And then he said, then there was this rumor that the guards had beat Alfred. I said, whoa. I said, wait a minute. You're saying that the whole prison thought that Alfred had been beaten to death? And he said, yeah.
So he was dead when he hit the floor? So he was dead when he...
So then I said, wait a minute. So why was everybody thinking that they beat him to death? And he said, well, I'm not sure Alfred was dead when he hit the floor. I think the guards might have roughed him up a little bit. And I was like, are you serious? And he said, oh, yeah, it's very possible. So then this morning when I'm talking to him and he's telling me this story again, all of a sudden now he said, when Alfred hit the floor, he wasn't stuck in the window. He went over to him and turned him over, and Alfred was still alive. And then a guard came in and said, get the hell out of here, you two. And they went back to their cell, and he said he doesn't know what happened. All he knows is Alfred was dead later. And then they came and got them to put them into solitary confinement, shipped them out of that prison to separate prisons, and told them not to talk about it. Now, you tell me, does that not sound suspicious?
Well,
and And to add to that, we had talked in a previous episode that there was a delay in sending Alfred's body back to the family. It took 2 weeks. And that's also in the FBI report. They noted that as well, that the family was very upset, very concerned. Why aren't you sending him? Eventually he gets to the mortuary in Ruskin, and the
funeral director.
Yeah, the person who worked, the funeral director calls the family, so they can identify Alfred. And he said that the official cause of death was wrong, that it was listed as electrocution. And he says he was beat to death. And he showed him the marks on the back, the bruises on the back, saying he was beaten. That's what caused his death. And then I believe later he changed it back to electrocution.
Wow.
So that what happened with at the mortuary starts to corroborate Al's story of the guard coming in when Alfred is supposedly semi-conscious after being electrocuted. And it could have been, for whatever reason, he was beating him. Either he's trying to get information or he was angry for trying to escape. And it was just kind of in the heat of the moment kind of a thing. And then he kills him, and then the cover-up starts. And they got to get the prisoners out of there, the inmates out of there who were witnesses. And then they tell the FBI, quote unquote, what really happened, when it didn't happen that way, because they were covering what did actually take place and how Alfred really died.
Yeah.
So he also said that his prison records were expunged. That, and believe it or not, he said that Marshall Dykes helped him get it expunged, so that he was not able to talk about everything. And so as we're sitting there talking, I said, wait a minute, I want to ask you another question. I've always heard, I heard it from Whitey Bulger, and I heard it from somewhere else, that they used to, at that prison, they would take inmates, the guards, and they would strap them into the electric chair that they called the Yellow Mama. And he knew it. He said, oh, yeah, the Yellow Mama. He said, I know exactly what you're talking about. He said, I know 2 prisoners that they did that to. He said they were he said African-American prisoners. They were housed separately. But he said, oh, it scared the crap out of him. And they would hit him with a little bit of juice, threatening to, pull the whole thing on top of him if he didn't say whatever they were trying to after. So he said, yes, that definitely happened. They would take prisoners and strap them into the electric chair and would play with them if they were either, having trouble with them or if they needed to get information out of them.
Wow.
Very interesting, because we heard the exact same thing. I still do not believe you've got one story from a person that was in the room, and then you've got the FBI story, which is totally a little bit different. It's not exact, because the FBI report says Alfred was still in the window. But Al says that is not true. He was on the floor.
And Al was there.
Al was there, along with another inmate.
That they got rid of very quickly right after.
Right.
Why would they get rid of him so quickly?
And then,
right.
Why would
Michael Dykes?
Michael Dykes, why would he, after so many years, want to expunge this Al's record?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
That's, to me, is the most interesting thing.
I asked, me and Mike were talking earlier, and I, like I said, I'm very good friends with Art, and I have asked Art several times about, items in the FBI report that would be redacted. And I even asked him, I said, can I have this individual's name? Would you tell me what it is, since you have the unredacted reports? And he always would come back and say, it's federal law. This is still an open investigation. I can't tell you who that person is by law because they're still alive. Well, wait a minute. How in the world did Marshall Dykes tell me this guy's name, Al, and I won't say his last name? He's still alive, and he's in that report, and he's redacted.
And then
why would he tell me his name?
Right.
Did you know Michael Dykes?
How to get in touch with him?
And did you know Michael before you knew Art?
Yes.
So did he tell you before Art, you met Art,
Yes.
or was it after?
Yes, he shared this with me in 2015. He was still, this was before we had Alfred exhumed, and he was still trying to, court some good graces with us because he was trying still to get DNA from us in order to test the bones that he had. And the email, for whatever reason, he sends me this email and says, hey, this guy named Al, he said Al contacted him. And I'm like going, how would Al know to contact a U.S. Marshal?
Well, unless he saw the documentary.
It wasn't out yet.
Oh, okay.
So my whole thing is that U.S. Marshal Dykes wanted me to contact him. He wanted me to hear this story for some reason. I don't know why. Like I said, talking to Al raised more questions than it answered. So I just kind of walk away talking to him going, what you're saying matches up. He even remembers, believe it or not, he remembers me and my family coming to the prison at Christmas time, meeting with Alfred. He was visiting, who was with his mom, according to him, right next door on another picnic table. He said, I remember seeing you. And I was like, that's crazy. I was only 3. I don't remember him, but
exactly.
He remembers us coming and visiting Alfred. He does remember Alfred receiving that horse picture. He said he never told him where he got it from. He did say, though, that Alfred told him that his brothers were in Brazil. Now,
and this is 1964?
This is 1963.
3.
So something he told me this morning blew me away. I told Mike about it. So he called, like I said, he called me this morning. I don't even know how he got my phone number, unless I guess maybe I showed up on his cell phone. But he called me this morning, wanting, hey, don't use my full name. You can use Al. Okay. We started chatting a little bit more. And I said, Al, did Alfred ever mention the name Mickey Cohen? And he goes, oh, yeah. I don't know who he is. I still don't know who he is. But, yeah, he told me about Mickey Cohen. And I'm going, really? And he goes, yeah, I don't know who the guy is, but, yeah, he mentioned Mickey Cohen.
That's crazy.
I was shocked. I was like,
well,
okay,
sure.
wait a minute. So here Alfred talking about Mickey Cohen to him, and he doesn't even know who he is.
How long did you talk to him for, Ken?
Yesterday I talked to him for maybe 40, 50 minutes. I got it recorded. I've got the GoPro loaded up on the same location that you pulled my mom's interview from.
Okay.
If you want to go and look at it, 7 clips. And then I'm still trying to figure out how to take the audio that I captured off of my phone, just the audio piece of it, and send it. So
okay,
I have it.
I can talk you through that. You have an iPhone, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I can talk you through that. So, Mike, getting back to your conversation with him,
Yeah.
What, in addition, is there anything else?
Oh yeah, yeah. He had more to say. He was, like I said, as soon as I brought it up, it was all there. It was, he was volunteering information. It wasn't, I wasn't, like a lawyer trying to get information out of, by asking probing questions. It was, he was telling me this information.
Mm-hmm.
I would ask clarifying questions, just so I understood. But 2 things that he said, which are very interesting, was he knew that the brothers survived the escape. Alfred told him that they had survived. As he put it, they made it to land, and that a boat had picked him up. He told me a boat picked him up from Alcatraz and got them to land. That's how he put it. Now, he didn't say anything about Fred Breezy. He didn't say anything about flying down to Mexico. He didn't have that information. But yeah, that detail about the boat, he told me, making it to land, and that Alfred told him that they had made it to Brazil. So Alfred knew, and he shared that with him. So, either he's a really good liar and somehow got this information and he's just feeding it to us, or he's recalling what Alfred had told him, back in 63 and early 64.
Yeah. I mean,
well, he also backed up So one of the things I tried to ask him things that my mom had shared with me.
Mm.
And I asked him about the drug program that was going on at Kilby the very next week after we had visited Alfred. And I told him about the prison newspaper that my mom had picked up. And he said, yes, there definitely was a drug program testing that was going on. He names in the recording, he names the drug company. I can't remember it right this minute, but he said that they were doing some pretty wild stuff with drugs and that it made a lot of the prisoners sick. And so they wound up having to cancel some of the testing that they were doing. But he said they were there was definitely drug testing going on. And this was back during the whole MK Ultra.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I forgot to mention one detail. When he talked about the boat, he specifically identified it as a fishing boat.
Yes.
Which is the same kind of boat that Robert Checky saw, the kind with the lights, when they go night fishing to attract the fish. So he knew that it was a fishing boat. So again, that's a detail. How would he have that information unless he was told by somebody who knew?
Mm-hmm. To me, the most interesting is Michael Dyke's interest in him.
Right.
And the fact that he helped expunge some of his records. So you don't do that for nothing.
No.
So there had to be some sort of exchange there.
Well, and that's the reason why he's very worried that if we use his name, that whatever deal he's had all these years, because he even told me, he said some of his family members do not know his story.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, if this gets out, I could lose my deal that I. What deal is he having?
Exactly.
Right.
What kind of deal? And he's 89 years.
Why would you give him a deal?
Exactly. And he's 89 years old. I mean, what could they revoke on an 89-year-old?
Well, if the federal government is trying to hide something, there is no telling what they're threatening him with.
True.
And if Michael Dykes was working with him, Michael Dykes didn't even take over the Alcatraz case until, I believe, so the very first contact I ever had with Michael Dykes was in 2012. And I believe if I remember right, he had the Alcatraz files for a couple of years. So maybe 2008. So,
excuse me.
Why was Michael Dykes working with this guy to expunge his record? I mean, what was so important to keep him quiet? And why did Michael want me to contact him, to hear this side of this story? That's the reason why I told Mike, either Al is telling us a falsehood. He's telling us something that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying it in a way that he wants us to hear it. Or the FBI, when they interviewed the prison guards, that's false. Because both of them can't be true, right? You can't have Alfred laying on the floor, still alive, in one version of the story, and the other version of it, he's laying halfway out the window and he's dead. So, I mean, it can't be true, right? And in the FBI files, it never talks about a third guy. It always said it was Alfred and this other guy that was black. It was, redacted. So,
yeah, it's very confusing, but not confusing for the government, because it almost seems like whether or not Michael Dykes created a narrative for him to tell you.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
So, in exchange for that, he would expunge his records.
Exactly. Well, but I go back to what does the death of Alfred have to do with the escape from Alcatraz from the FBI perspective in the files? Why is his death listed in the FBI files?
Yeah.
I mean, if you were reading the FBI files and this is about all the interviews and then the investigation of the items and the evidence, what does Alfred's death in Kilby Prison, 3,000 miles away, have to do with the escape from Alcatraz?
Because he knew they were alive.
Exactly.
It's the only thing that makes sense.
And he knew where they were.
And he knew where they were. So
You're
he
exactly
knew they
right.
were alive, he knew where they were, and that's it. Because there's
That is
no
the reason
reason.
why it's included.
There's no reason for it. They would not
Mhm.
care. Just like with the rest of your family.
Right.
Why would they care? And it is to me, it's suspicious that Michael Dykes would say, "Hey Ken, call this guy." You know, I mean, it's like,
Yeah, I mean, you saw the email
Yeah.
I got from him. Okay.
yeah,
He's sharing this guy's name
why?
and number. This was an individual that was part of the investigation. According to Art, now Art maybe can come on here and explain it. Why would Michael Dykes give me an individual's name that was still alive that was part of an investigation?
Wouldn't.
And his number, not just his name, but how to get in contact with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have
mean,
Art not saying, "Oh, we can't tell you that information" after the fact.
it's-
Yeah, exactly. I've asked Art for stuff that I know for a fact that the person is dead. And he would say, I can't tell you that because it's
Sure.
still an open investigation, and that we can't reveal our sources or whatever whatever they want to say to shut
Mhm.
you up because they don't want to share anything.
He's just being a good G-man. That's
is-
all I can say.
Yeah.
Because we
But
know a lot of G-men and G-women,
Yeah.
and they would tell us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
They tell
would
us.
like, though, to take the full name of this individual and give it to one of our U.S. Marshals that is going to truly work with us. And first of all, let's verify that this individual was at Kilby Prison during this time frame.
Yeah. Well,
If
how
we
you
can do that,
aren't
that
the
will-
records
that
all
will-
screwed up though? Aren't the records aren't they all screwed up and they're like they can't find them?
Well, they can't find Alfred's. Now, that's something I told Al this morning. I said, I'm getting ready right now to. I have the paperwork. I'm filling it out, sending it to the corrections board in Alabama. I'm asking one more time. I have to pay $20 to see if they will give me any information on Alfred in Kilby Prison. And they've come back several times saying they don't have any of the records. They were destroyed, or they just don't have anything. And when I told Al this, he was like, "Well, I don't doubt that." He said, "I don't doubt that."
Yeah, now they lose stuff. Yeah, it doesn't benefit for them to keep them stuff, especially if there's stuff there that they don't want people to see.
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. It's very interesting.
Just another.
Let's just put it this way. I can't imagine the level of paper shredding that's happening right now with Christopher Wray announced that he's leaving a month before the inauguration, and Trump's Kash Patel, a guy who's coming in, who's who plans to turn the place over. I can't imagine the amount of data deleting that's happening right now.
Well, my question is this: did they know when you got that email from Michael Dykes that you were in the middle of doing a documentary?
I'll have to look at the date, but they knew we were. They did know that we were, because he's a U.S. Marshal. I was working with Art Roderick. We started working on this documentary in the early part of 2015, so he had to know.
Right. That's my point.
that
So
we
he
were working
knew
on something.
here you're getting ready to go public with all this stuff.
Yes.
So talk to this guy.
Well,
I mean, it's just
yeah.
I can't tell you, but I can tell you, this guy can tell you.
So something I told Mike too was interesting. I went back and I reread the FBI documents on Alfred's death, and something that struck me so odd when I read it. Every time I read it, I seem like I find something. So when they come in and they find Alfred, supposedly he had a waterproof pouch. Tell me if all this doesn't sound familiar now. He had a waterproof pouch, and inside of the pouch were family photos, personal items. There was a forged Alabama driver's license. There was a small, I guess, jumper cables handheld that you would use to jump a car if you were stealing it. And there were addresses from people in the state of Alabama and also other states. Just random addresses, names. Where have you heard this story at before? This is the same thing that they said John carried with him. He had a waterproof pouch. He had photos. He had family items, and he also had all these addresses throughout the whole United States.
I mean, heck, the only person who could have acquired those things for him is Uncle Man.
Well, either that,
right,
or it was personally planted, because, like I said, how would Alfred get access to addresses in other states if he's in a prison?
Now, I did ask, when I talked to Al, I did ask him about what he brought with him. And he said that he was traveling light, and the only thing he had was a satchel that he had with him that had his things in it, but he didn't know what was in the satchel. He didn't ever see that, just that he carried it, that it was very portable for Alfred.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Do you think that Alfred would have risked his parole to do this? Do you think the story's true?
Well, so I was thinking about that too. And so if you were the authorities, and my mom has always believed, you will never convince her any other way, that picnic table that we sat at Christmas time was bugged. And when Alfred had already told his older brother that he knew where they were at, he had contact with them, he tells my mom and dad the exact same thing. If you were the authorities and you wanted to tell Alfred, you wanted to follow him, when he gets out, if he got paroled, he wasn't going to go directly to them. He would probably go down home. He'd go see his mom and his dad and visit it. It might be months before he eventually takes off to wherever, they're at. But if you're on the run, if you escaped, you can't go home. You got to go right then. So did they do something to him or threaten him in a way that made him say, I've got to get out of here? So he decides it's better to try and leave than to stay. And he killed himself in the process. Right. Who knows? They might have been waiting for him on the outside. They were going to follow him wherever he went.
Sure.
Because they would know he's on the run. He's not going to be going home. He's going to be going to wherever they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just one other detail to add to that, and we've spoken about it before. Now with this new information from Al, it's like other things we talked about before kind of tie in together a little bit more closely. There's more of a link to them rather than sort of these random details that we don't quite understand.
Yeah.
And Ken had talked about that just before Alfred had died, when he wrote home, he wrote it on that blue paper.
Mm-hmm.
And the blue paper meant that he was in solitary confinement, that he had, he was a trustee. He had been, since day one at Kilby, he was made a trustee. So obviously there was a level of trust that they placed on him to have that kind of freedom from the get-go. But something happened. Now he's in solitary confinement, which means he's in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
He had violated some rule or had some kind of an altercation. And so when he was writing on the blue paper, in the letter, he's talking about how much he loves it there and it's great and he really enjoys it. But something had gone wrong. Well, if the FBI is putting increasing heat on him, they have isolated him, and now they can start making the threats and the intimidation of, you're going to go back to federal prison, you're never going to see the light of day again, you're going to be in jail for years and years and years because you're not cooperating. And then he's kind of like, I need to get out of here. I can't. They're really amping up the pressure on me. Now, and one of the things that Al did say, I asked him specifically, I said, did Alfred ever say anything to the FBI about the brothers, of where they were? Did he volunteer? Did he break, basically? Did he finally crack and give them information? And he said, no, absolutely not. He did not reveal one thing to the FBI. So I guess Alfred must have told him before he died that he didn't tell him anything. And so that going back to the blue paper, that makes more sense of why that would happen. They just probably trumped up some charge against him just to get him in solitary, where they can be more persuasive without other inmates knowing what was going on.
Yeah. This Kilby Prison sounds like
lots of stuff going on there.
I mean, it's like, you don't know. I mean, the level of those prisons back then, and even today, that you don't really know what goes on inside those prisons. I mean, I spent I did 4 years going inside all the craziest prisons in the country, and they're like their own little fiefdoms and kingdoms. So once you're behind those walls, that you don't know what's going on. There's a whole thing. I mean, doesn't see people milling about, but there's all these inside baseball and politics and leveraging against people and the correctional officers. I mean, it's crazy. And it's like, you don't see it from the outs. Like when you're in there, you don't see it, but you can, as I was spent more time in there, people were handing me kites, the notes on strings. Like I'd be walking through a prison and then I'd see a note drop down on a string in front of me. And they go, "You want to interview me? You want to hear my story? You want to hear about what they do to us in here?" And I'm like, of course I'm reading it, and there's a correctional officer over my shoulder. He goes, "What did you get there?" And he takes it out of my hand. He goes, "You won't be talking to this guy." So
you can imagine what it was like in 1963.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not trying to throw the state of Alabama down, but that was the good old South, and good old boy justice at that time prevailed. And that was back when they had the chain gangs, and it was it was pretty much what you see in some of these movies.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean,
it was not an easy place.
If an inmate died, they didn't question it.
No.
They were they're in jail, they're in prison. They got what they deserved.
Well, even Whitey Bulger wrote sometimes in some letters. I think even in Kilby, he said that they would they would tell a prisoner to go over and pick something up, and then they would wind up shooting them, claiming that he was trying to get away. And who are you going to believe? You're going to believe the prisoner, or are you going to believe the correctional officer? So it's
there's less paperwork.
There's
less paperwork that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
He tried to escape, and I gave him a warning. No one heard the warning. But
well, all I know is Al was pretty convincing when it came to some of the things he shared with me and Mike about Alfred, and the fact that that kind of backs up the fact that if he got electrocuted, I've always said, okay, if he hit the electrical wire with his back, he's arching up, according to the files and according to the way Al said. He gets his shirt caught on something, and he arches his back to try and free his shirt, and his back comes in contact with the electrical line. Well, that automatically is going to throw him forward, right? Even if he lost all consciousness, the weight of his body is going to bring him down off of that electrical line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, as well as I do, that if you're electrocuting someone in the electric chair, they have to stay in there for quite a few minutes to kill them. It's not like it's instant.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
so it's a very possibility that Alfred was still alive when he came in.
Mm-hmm.
He probably came in, like Mike said, he was probably dazed, laying on his face. According to Al, he was face down. And Al said he went over and looked at him, and he looked like he was still alive. And then, of course, the guard comes in, and the guard tells him, "Get the hell out of here." And, but what was so amazing was that everybody in the prison was saying Alfred had been beaten to death.
Got it.
He said that was the rumor that was going around the prison, that Alfred had been beaten to death.
Yeah. Well,
now,
it's good.
How is that a rumor?
Exactly. Well, what it does validate some of the report that they wrote up, that he did try to escape. And that he was, and Al, validated that the fact that he did he was electrified somehow, but that he was still alive. So it does, in a way, it does stitch together a truthful narrative for what they did. Just enough, they're just gilding the lily as far as how they want to kind of control that narrative.
Right.
So
if he's
the fact that Al was there.
Right.
And he was telling you, he told both of you that he was there is a bombshell. That's pretty amazing. And the fact that he also told, we have another person who has information from a family member saying that they made it, not only they make it out, but they were in Brazil.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, so it corroborates, like you said, that they made it to Brazil. It also corroborates that Alfred knew Mickey Cohen. Why would he say the name Mickey Cohen to this individual?
Mm-hmm.
This individual, Al, doesn't even, still to this day, according to what he told me this morning, I don't know who Mickey Cohen is. I never even heard of him before. But he said Alfred mentioned his name to him.
Yeah.
Why would Alfred mention Mickey Cohen?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
There
how
would
did
be
that
no
information
reason.
get to him?
Right.
Right. Well,
What did he think about? Did you talk about how your mother thought the table was bugged?
I did not. I did not bring up the fact that we thought, and now he wants me to call him back. So I might some of these questions, some of these things I still want to kind of ask him, and I will report it as I talk to him. But
well, you can also tell him that we can disguise his voice. We don't have to say anything. He can. We can keep him anonymous. He doesn't have to physically appear on it. We can just hear him.
I'll ask him. I'll ask him if he would just do a voice. Maybe we just don't. We have a blank one or something. Maybe we put Al up in front of Alfred. Have the face of Alfred.
What were you gonna say, Mike?
When I talked to him the first time about asking him to be on the show, I asked him early in our conversation when I realized, hey, this guy's got a lot of information. We need to get him on, and he can tell us all this great stuff. And then he said, no, I don't want to do that. I won't go on your show. And then we were talking, so I thought I'm going to ask more questions. And then later, near the end of the conversation, because I wanted to tread lightly. I don't want to push him too hard until he finally said, look, I don't want to talk anymore. And he hangs up and leave it in bad taste. But I didn't want to leave it with unanswered questions either. So I was so we talked for about a half an hour, and I felt that was long enough where I said, thank you very much. And then I said, would it be okay if Ken called you? Because, he's the nephew, he's family, and you can tell him and he goes, yeah, that's fine. You can call me. So that's why Ken had gotten permission to talk to him. It was just again, like I said before, all that information was there. He was very sharp. It was very clear. He remembered very specific details, which really impressed me. He was very convincing in what he was saying, where I was walking away thinking, like, he was there. This isn't just some big setup to kind of take us into another direction. So I'm thinking, at least at this point, what he's saying is legitimate. Now, another detail that he added that Ken asked him about, because one of the things I didn't ask him specifically was when they were in the picnic area with the tables.
Yeah.
That Al's mother, visited the same day as Alfred's family at the same time, which was an odd coincidence, and they had him in the same place to do their visitation. Well, one of the things that Al said that one of his parents did was gave Alfred $100, and Alfred put that $100 in his shoe. There's like the little liner. You take the liner out and you put the $100, and then you put the liner in, and then did that. And we know from previous episodes that that's what Uncle Man did when John gave him the $500 after the bank robbery, that he hid the money in his shoe. And even Ken's mother remembered that detail when he interviewed her, talking about hiding the money in the shoe. So there's a consistency of what the family members would do to hide money, is you put it in your
and
shoe.
that was a common thing people did back then. They always put money in shoes and stuff like that.
But the thing that I didn't think to ask him at the time was, how close were the tables? Were they just a few feet apart, or were they 20, 30 feet apart? I don't know. For him to observe that, because Ken did ask his mother, did that happen? And she doesn't remember that happening, that the family would give Alfred $100.
Well, she was young too.
Well, yeah, and she did tell me that, because my sister was like 10. I asked her, and she was like, I don't remember anything about it too much. And I asked my mom, and she was like, well, I don't really remember either. I was so focused on meeting with Alfred and visiting. And then, of course, my dad would have been the one who would have done it. And he's no longer with us, so it's kind of hard to ask him.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was only 3, so I definitely don't remember. It's possible, I don't know. But I do like, going based upon the FBI files, when they find Alfred in the window, they do, I guess, inventory his pockets, and they only list that he had like $14 on him. So, or it might not even been that much.
What about
But then
the
again,
pouch? What
they
about
might
the
not have
pouch with the
shipped it
fake
cheap.
ID? The pouch with the fake ID and the addresses. Is that just listed in the report, or was there actually photographs of it, or is there?
No, this was
No.
just these are just listed in the FBI files. There's no photographs of them, and I'm kind of wanting to know. Okay, well, what photos are you talking about?
Mhm.
And all these addresses. It's just so strange that this is like I can understand John and Clarence. John wanted to take a waterproof pouch. He's fixing to jump in the bay.
Right.
Well, where is Alfred going? That he's going to need a waterproof pouch.
It's
Why
identical.
would you create the exact same scenario?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
No.
But there's a lot of things about Alfred that doesn't make sense. So,
Right.
Yeah, it's
So
strange.
interesting, though.
That's great. Well, you're going to talk to him again,
I am.
and you already have some of his interview recorded. That hopefully maybe we not use of the podcast, but for something else.
I remember. I was going to say something, and I lost it, and I just remembered. So when I talked to him about coming on the show, I did say we can do it by phone. We can just do it as an audio. And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. He wasn't comfortable coming on the show, even as an audio where we can mask his voice, just refer to him only
for some
by
reason,
Al.
he didn't have a problem with me recording you.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, sometimes the first initial contact with these kinds of people, they always say no. Then you talk to them again, and they kind of loosen up a bit, and then you talk to them again, and then finally they're like, yeah, okay. It's just,
I'll ask
the more you
again.
get their trust, the more that he might open up and do it. That's my experience in doing this for so long for TV shows.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just people initial reaction is always no.
Yeah. No is the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah. So
I'll
you never
ask him
know.
again. And
Yeah.
he's interested
But
in
either
that.
way, very great interview, guys.
Yeah, great
fantastic find. Really interesting stuff, and it kind of puts another spin on the whole.
Well, and the
Alfred
thing that I was
story.
pleased about was that Alfred had shared with Al, like I said, information about the escape. The boat picking them up, a fishing boat, that they made it to land, that they survived, and that they were in Brazil. All corroborating information that we had. He has this information that Alfred had given him. So again, it's another source saying the same thing that we've been saying the whole time, that they didn't die, they didn't drown. And now I didn't ask him anything about family and children, because that would have been too early for Alfred. I mean, for John and Clarence. If it was, they'd only been out for a couple of years, that probably wouldn't have happened. So I don't think Al would have had that.
How much more time did he spend behind bars after that whole event?
He told us that right after the death of Alfred, they were in solitary confinement for a couple of weeks, and then they shipped him off to one prison. He told me the name of the prison. It's on the recording. And they shipped this other guy off to another prison. He didn't say how much longer he was in there. All he said was at some point in time, they cut him a deal, and he got out, and then Marshall Dykes helped him get his record expunged. I mean, this is on the recording.
Wow.
So whatever happened and transpired, they quickly got him out of that prison. I remember my mom saying, tell me one time that she wrote the warden of Kilby right after the death of Alfred, and wanted to know if she could write the individual that was in the room with him. And they told her absolutely not, and that he had been transferred to another prison. And so my mom and dad, or my mom and the rest of the family, never knew who this individual was.
Oh, and the other thing I want to bring up is that Al also talked about having at least one or possibly two family members ready to pick him up, when he got out of prison, which again would be consistent with what they did growing up. Because whenever they would break out, there was often somebody waiting to pick them up. There was some kind of a rendezvous set up that was very consistent with their behavior. So that wouldn't have been an unusual thing that Alfred, thinking like, I got to get out of here. I can't stay. They're going to, send me to a federal prison. Who knows when? That he would probably contact Uncle Man, his brother Robert, and say, meet me on the night of, and get me out of here and go into hiding. Because remember, when Alfred had escaped prison before, he hid out in the pits for 5 years, evading justice in this very rural area, part of Ruskin. So, it wouldn't be, out of character for Robert and possibly another brother to have a car waiting for him outside the gates and ready to get him and take him off. So again, it's information that intersects with what we have. He's not saying something that's just kind of out there, like, oh, they went to the Philippines. It's nothing like that.
And he puts himself in the room, which is interesting.
Which is very interesting.
That to me is the most. I mean, because that's a not a third person account.
Right.
It's a first person account.
He's an eyewitness, and
he saw it.
And he's adamant that this event happened there. He was there, and it was very traumatic for him. And when I talked to him, he says that he still doesn't like to talk about it, that it still has that lingering sadness for him that he witnessed, Alfred going through what he went through, either direct electrocution or, later beating, but that he was a witness to his death. And he still is still troubled by that all these years later.
It's just amazing that after 60 plus years, we're still finding valid new information that validates everything that you guys are talking about.
Yep.
And the fact that you still have, we talked about Herman the German, he's still alive. The prison guard. I mean, which validates, which gave us a new perspective on how he was being fingered for the one who was responsible because he didn't check on them. And he says, no. He goes, I said something. They didn't follow up on it, just that. And that's just over the last year, and then you have this coming from 3,000 miles away.
Yep.
It just, the connection there, and that he knows, he knew who Mickey Cohen was. He didn't know who Mickey actually was, but he remembers the name.
But he remembered the name. When I asked him that name, he remembered that name.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, I'll mention that name.
And, I had, my grandfather was a World War II veteran and hero, and he lived till 94. And up until he was, 92, he couldn't remember much that happened 5 minutes ago or that day or what, but whenever I started talking to him about stuff that happened in the war, it was like you were talking to a different person. It was like he was connecting the dots. His sentences flowed. It was almost like it's easier for them to access that information as opposed to just information that's right there. I don't know what it is about the brain, but I still, to this day, like we were just talking about phone numbers and your family having the same, I can still remember my friends' phone numbers from grade school, but I have a hard time remembering other people's phone numbers. Right. You ask me, I can still remember it.
Your own phone number.
Yeah.
He can't remember his own.
I can remember my friend.
Yeah. You remember his number from 30 years ago.
My mom's the same way. Her long-term memory is sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
But you ask her what happened yesterday, and she'll. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Did you take your medication? Oh,
yeah.
I remember.
I don't know.
But she can tell you every single thing that happened 50, 60 years ago.
We saw it in that interview.
Yeah,
you could see amazing. She was reliving it all. I mean, it was very it was flowing, and you could also see the reaction, the feelings pop up while she's describing it. It's just the way the brain works. And thank God that Al is still alive and he's still with us, and you were able to connect with him, and both of you connect with him, and I think he will talk more.
Yeah,
I think he will too.
I think he will.
And probably what'll happen is he's probably doing a lot of just thinking about it. Start bringing, and then it's like he's going to start remembering other things, other details are going to be coming back to him.
Yeah,
it's all very interesting.
This is good stuff.
Good stuff, guys.
Very good stuff.
Yep.
All right,
guys. So we'll talk to you next week.
All right.
All right.
That's good.